I was sitting across from this 99-year-old man, and he said to me, "Do you want to see the most fulfilled person you've ever met?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course. Who is that?" He said, "You're looking at him." And I said, "Well, okay, sign me up. I want to know how to be like you."
Hey guys, welcome to the Something New Show. I'm your host, Mindi Linscombe, and we are here to learn how to live a life worth celebrating. And I have one of the most exciting guests in our studios that we've ever had. This is Miss Dianne Derby. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited to be here. Just to be in your showroom alone was magical. You feel magical when you walk in.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And you guys, she is normally on the other side of the table doing the interviews. And so it's very intimidating for someone interviewing a pro journalist, a pro anchor, all of those things. But I'm going to do my best today, Diane.
I'm supporting you. I'm cheering you on.
Okay,
for sure.
Great. Well, I want you to know a little bit more about her before we begin. Dianne Derby is a 2-time Emmy award-winning journalist with 19 years of experience covering major news events in Southern Colorado and across the country. She has 2 master's degrees, one from Florida State University and one from University of Miami. She completed her undergraduate work in Florida, and her book that she just released in 2022 is a memoir about the power of mentoring titled 200 Tuesdays, What a Pearl Harbor Survivor Taught Me About Life, Love, and Faith. In her free time, she loves hiking, camping, and making memories with her family. She is always ready for some tips and salsa, which I can tell you where to get the best of that, and a good shopping spree. So I can relate to so much of that. And it's so fun to see you kind of blossom out of just a career of journalism from, different stations that you've worked at, different experiences. I'd really like to hear, before we get into some more life stuff, how did you decide you wanted a career in journalism?
I always say that it started when I was 3, and my uncle would always say that I was reporting on all the transgressions my cousins were,
Yes,
all
you're
the
like,
things
this is what
they were
happened.
committing. So he says I was reporting since I was 3 years old. So I think it just is about telling people things. It's about informing them. And then it turned into really just a love at this point in my career, 20 years in, of showing the stories of overcoming and how did people get there. I'm fascinated by people like you, all the people that I meet in the community. Everyone has such a unique story and how they got there. And I'm always asking people, what made you you? I want to know how you got there. Was it your family? Was it your faith? What got you there? Because it teaches me. So it's kind of selfish in a way, right? That I do this reporting thing so I can learn from them.
But I just think you have such a hard work ethic, because
Thank you.
I remember being in a comm degree, journalism major, all that stuff, thinking I want to do this. But then I started to realize, really, to get your way to the top, the hours are terrible. And you have to move from station to station in whatever zip code that means, because you're just trying to get to the next level, right? And so it's like, you're going to get a bigger network. And so that means you move.
Right.
And so what kind of journey was that like for you? Coming from Florida, did you just say, I'll do whatever, go wherever?
I was determined. So I went to the University of Miami, and that's where I got my communications degree. And I just one day, like I do with so many people, sent an email out. I remember it was New Year's Eve one night, and I said, how did you get there? It's something I always wanted to do. I just didn't have the guts to do it. So I had a lot of different journeys. As you've mentioned a little bit about my degrees, I really am good at school. I liked school. And so I said, what is it that I want to do? Like you've shared with your husband in a podcast, that is your dream. And this was my dream. And there was nothing that was going to stop me from that. So when I want something, I go find the people who are the very best at it. So I would listen to mentors. I would ask the top reporters. I had no problem just going for what I wanted. And so that's what I encourage journalists now to do. This job is no joke. Mindi, when you start, you make absolutely no money.
That's what I'm saying.
You work totally absurd hours. You work every single holiday. It takes a piece of your soul in the beginning, but the payoff is so great, because when I'm in the position I am now, I get to choose. Thank you, bosses. I get to choose what stories I want to do. I do a segment called Positively Colorado. After years of telling really bad stuff, that feeds my soul. I give people the Jefferson Award every week, every month, which is about community service. It's a nationwide program. Those are the things that feed my soul after telling the worst of the world.
I can't even
So
imagine.
for me, the journey was so hard. It was really hard to be a consumer reporter. I was one of those for 5 years in Greenville, South Carolina, where I went after companies who did people wrong. And although my family, my friends called me the Queen of Justice, because I loved going to get that for people, it was totally exhausting. And so now I'm in a role where I'm trying to mentor young journalists. And man, I know if they're listening right now, they would say, Diane needs a lot of work on that, because it's really hard when you just get it, right? You're like, oh, I get how to do this. This is so much easier, but you're teaching. So I'm really trying to lean into my work of mentoring and figuring out, how do you really teach people well and carefully and joyfully? And that's the thing I struggle with. So I'm trying to still figure that out 20 years in.
And one of the hardest things, I think, very specific to your career, but could overlap with many, is that it's so long, so many years, so many sacrifices before there's a reward of getting to choose your story, or the times of your work day, or, you know what I mean, where you maybe just get whatever shift they give you in the beginning. You get whatever stories they give you, and you get paid nothing. And
nothing.
You must have had an extreme level of like seeing the end in mind.
I was able to see that then. I wish I had the faith that I do in Jesus now then, because I think that would have supported me more, and we can talk about that whenever. But in the beginning, I just was determined. When I want something, I'm willing to just put the time in. I don't know. I say it to a lot of young journalists right now. I have said goodbye to more people than I've stayed with, right? Because this is not for the weak. You get criticized constantly. You have to fight for what's right. You are constantly under a deadline pressure that newscast is coming no matter where you are in your interview process. So you have to figure things out quickly, right? And that is a tremendous pressure on a journalist who doesn't even know the story topic of the day until they get in that morning, and they have to know that whole thing by that night. That's not simple. And so there's just a tremendous pressure on journalists to get it right. But I always say to them, it's worth it. If you can just hang in there, you will get there. You will get to do what you want to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's good advice for any career that takes a while before you get the reward. Right.
You want the reward right away. A lot of young journalists make the mistake of saying, I want to be a news anchor. Well, let me tell you this. I had a mentor tell me very early in the beginning, you must be a good reporter first, and you must be a good reporter. Because once you have that spotlight on you and you make mistakes and you don't know how to legally correct things, that's a pressure you don't even know.
Yeah, and there is a pressure, I feel like, even more in the recent years for journalism, just being so criticized, because there's a responsibility to the truth of the story.
Yes.
And I feel like journalists have so much power to spin whatever piece or angle based on their personal desires, when you have to really, I think in ethical journalism, you have to completely remove your potential biases. And I just think there is a responsibility in journalism to say, hey, like, I'm going to report this evidence, but without my personal bias. So how do you handle that?
So I look quickly in stories if I think that they're an ad. And I go, where did you get this? My newsroom always teases me that I say, who wrote this? Because I want to know where they got the information from. I'm such a stickler about sticking to the facts because I'm a human being. So of course I have an opinion about that story.
Yeah,
however, the gift of my career is that I've been able to see multiple sides. Now, for instance, someone murders someone. It's a heinous crime. I don't support that crime, right? It's a horrible thing. But if you look into their background and you see the abuse they faced and all these things, you can see the why. It doesn't condone it, right? But you see how someone got there. So I'm able to see so many different sides. I can interview a politician and go, hold on, I need to ask someone else. One of the things that you have to be good at as a journalist is not caring how many people you ask and not looking stupid when you ask it. You just got to get it right. Get it right. And so I spend my whole day doing that.
Yeah, I was going to say verifying possibly the original story by getting multiple accounts.
Right. And it's exhausting. And I know my producers and my staff just go crazy with the way I push them on that. But this is my face. This is our integrity. If you don't have that when you're a journalist, you have nothing left.
Yes. And how much is the journalist versus the network? I always wonder this. I always wonder, like, when something is produced or a story is covered, I always wonder, is this coming from the person speaking? Did they articulate their thoughts and communicate this story? Or was this the network's overarching belief on how this took place?
Gosh, that's so hard. I could never work for a company where I believed that in any way the stories choices that were made every day were because of a network choice.
Okay.
So I don't believe that's happening with me. That would be a really big ethical problem. I see that happen. I know it happens. And you're right.
That's what I was wondering. It does. Does
yes.
it?
Oh, definitely. I had a situation once where a station came to me over this huge investigation I was doing. And they said the company, this is not this station here, okay? So I'll make that clear.
Yeah,
this
it's
is
not
News
our
5.
local.
I'll
Yeah.
just say a station in the past where I was doing a months-long investigation on a company. And they came and said, this company has pulled $1 million in advertising. And I said, so what? What does that have to do with my story? And they looked at me and they said, we're going to pull back. I resigned 10 minutes later, and I never looked back. I was devastated to resign. Devastated. But you cannot allow another company that we're doing a very big investigation. I wanted to get a recall. You cannot allow them to do that.
Well, it's definitely, sadly, the world we live in
Right.
is that you can strong arm your messaging with the proper funding.
You can. And it happens all the time. But I will tell you, it will not happen with me.
Which is so
But
refreshing.
it takes so long to get there, right?
Right.
Because in the beginning, you're like, wait, this doesn't feel good. I always say I'm working with my therapist right now on deep red flags. When you see a red flag, you got to listen. I don't know what your red flag looks like or feel like, but you have to listen to that red flag. And that red flag that day that came to me was like,
Well, and
I never intended to leave that station.
right.
I loved what I did.
That is incredibly powerful to
Thank
make
you.
a move like that, because most people would be more stuck in fear of what the unknown is. Like, will I have another job soon? Will I be able to provide for my family? Will other companies, networks pick me up, whatever your job may be, if you leave for an ethical reason? How will this close doors for me because they're all connected?
Of course, I thought all those things. And do you know what I did? After being in the business for so long, I knocked on the door of my hair salon and I did makeup for several months. And they said, why you're the TV lady. What are you doing here? I go, I left my station. I do makeup now. And then I got a job here.
Wow.
Right? So you have to do it because I felt so strongly. I've messed up so many times in my life, Mindi. But that with me and journalism, like that's just one thing I don't know. I'm good at saying no at that point.
And there, like I said, there is a code of ethics. I believe there should be anyways in journalism to have that level of commitment to just unbiased journalism, truth telling, and not backing down on a story because of a corporate sponsorship. You know, that's kind of a code of ethics. But like I said, I don't know that that's the norm. And so
It's not.
Very much respect you for
Thank
those
you.
decisions. I know that wasn't your only walk away moment for,
No.
code of ethics. So that's really brave. I mean, I hope somebody listening, if they might be in a situation where they're seeing some red flags, that to trust that I believe honoring your code of ethics more so than being afraid of what my next steps are
Right.
will always pay you out farther in the long run.
Right.
It might not feel good in the temporary. You do makeup in the temporary.
I did it. It was so crazy,
you
right?
do what you got to do in the temporary. And I always tell my kids, like, you can always make money. Like, that is always, you can add value to people's lives in any way. If you needed $1,000 in a month, you could figure it out. It's an amazing country that we live in. I'm like, go shovel driveways, ask people to weed their yards, whatever you got to do. You could come up with money, whatever age you are, but you can't just alter your character.
You can't. And that doesn't mean I've made every decision in my life that was a good one from then. But for some reason, I'm really proud of that one. So thanks for acknowledging that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so did the journalism thing and moved networks, which again is gritty to say, okay, I'll move to Colorado. I mean, I know Colorado sounds great to many people, but you're leaving Florida, your home, your family, and you take, or even South Carolina, wherever you were, you said, I will take necessary steps to take the next step in my career, wherever that may lead me. I'm sure you had other options too, right?
So as soon as that happened, I gave myself a really big pity party for like, probably probably a week. I was really sad about it.
Yeah.
And then I said, I need an agent. So I got an agent because I didn't think anyone would hire me. But here's the remarkable thing. Every time someone hears that story, they're like, of course I would hire you. I had this amazing opportunity to meet Scott Pelley in New York City. I told him my story, and he had just come back from Afghanistan. And he looked at me and he said, your story is one of the bravest I've ever heard. I'll never forget that moment, meeting my idol, right? Of course, it wasn't the bravest thing he's ever heard. It was a gracious, gracious comment that he said to me. I still have a picture from that day. And it reminds me that I made a right choice in that decision. And so one of my dear friends says, make the next right choice. And I try to think about that as often as I can. But I think I just took us off track.
It's okay. It's okay. It's a great piece of advice. So you had options to go from South Carolina to anywhere, but Colorado was where you chose.
Colorado called me home. As soon as I got off the plane for my interview here, I took a look at Pikes Peak and I said, oh my goodness, well, of course I want to live there. It's beautiful. And then I got to do this amazing job. And as soon as I got there, everything clicked. And so I met my mentor because I started getting all these requests to show up. And my boss said to me, Diane, show up every place you can because we want people to know who you are. So I would just show up and show up and show up. And I showed up to a veterans event. And there in walks my mentor, who I didn't know was going to be my mentor, 99 years old, a Pearl Harbor survivor at a World War II veterans breakfast at a diner off Centennial Boulevard. I walked in. I said, well, this is cool. I need to get my photog here. Called my photographer. I said, hey, one of the oldest survivors, Pearl Harbor's here. Come here. We got to get him on air really quick. And I sat across from him, and I did a quick interview in the foyer. Here's this 99-year-old man standing with his walker. And I said, wait, he drove in here. How cool is this? He's doing a quick interview. And I went, oh, man, there's so much more to that. Right? I want to continue our conversation today, Mindi, because it's like, wait, there's so much more from that person. And he handed me his business card. I thought, how cool, he's 99, he has a business card. Well, it wasn't a business card. It just had his name and his email and his phone number. He said, give me a call sometime. I'd love to connect with you. And so we did. He invited me to a breakfast with my ex-husband. We went, and he said to me at the end of the breakfast, the moral of the story is, would you like to study the Bible with me? And anytime someone would ask me that, that would really weird me out. I'd be like, ooh, that's really too evangelical-y to me, too religious for me. I immediately said yes. Because I saw him and I said, whatever he has, I want that because he looks so joyful.
Well, and you say in your book is, was it when you met him that he said, would you like to meet the most fulfilled person you'll ever know because you're looking at him?
Yes.
Was that day?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that day. It was at the luncheon. So one of the first questions his son went, I always say it went for the jugular. And to this day, he says, Diane, I'm so sorry I went there so quick. He said, tell me about your relationship with Jesus. I just don't think that's a normal question to ask people. Now I see why people do it, but I just think that's so forward. Well, do you want to know my blood type?
Yeah. Or
what else
what
do you
my political views are?
Do you want my political views? And I was so stunned and taken aback by that question. I said to him, well, I was raised Catholic. I went to church every week with my family. We didn't talk about religion a lot. We did all the things that were required by Catholics. We stood, we sat, we went to church, I got communion, and I went home. That was the end of the discussion. So I said, I know Jesus exists, I don't know him. And then he looked at me, he said, do you want to see the most fulfilled person you've ever seen? I said, yeah, I do. He goes, you're looking at him. Would you like to study the Bible with me? And that's why I said yes so quick. Who doesn't want that? Yeah, give me a fulfillment. Isn't that what we're all seeking in some way?
Yeah.
And so I did get that from him. So much fulfillment. So began 200 Tuesdays, 5 years of studying the Bible with my mentor, Jim Downing. I haven't even said his name. I should say his name. He's in heaven now.
And that's the name of your book.
Yes.
And if you haven't read it, you should definitely check it out, 200 Tuesdays. And I just want to ask you, what was the format on those Tuesday mornings?
Oh, I love that you asked that, right? Because everyone wants like the formula. What did you do? So he said, he goes, I want you to bring your Bible. My Bible was in cellophane, okay? From when I got confirmed in the church that I had to do before I got married in the Catholic
and
church.
Like blow off the dust, right?
As far as I know, and I probably missed all of this as being a good Catholic, we don't do the Bible thing. We don't like get in there and read it. So I go to Barnes and Noble and I'm like sweating, right? Because where are the Bibles? Right in front of everyone. And I'm Googling. What's a good study Bible? And it says
there's
ESV.
So many versions, right?
I'm overwhelmed. So journalist
well, it's
gets
like
information.
going to the soup aisle.
Yeah, what? Like how?
Yeah, so you're at a Bible aisle and you're like, which one? There are so many choices.
It said ESV. I grabbed the book and I ran out of the store.
Okay.
And so we started, and he said, I want you to do this formula, A, B, C, D, E. A is your title, B is your best verse, C is your challenge, D is your difficulty, E is the summary. And that's what we did every week. But it became so much more than that, right? Because we would talk, and he would do it too. He had already read the Bible 1,000 times, had major parts of it memorized. And he would do it with me. We started in John. He goes, we're going to start in John. And I want you to do those things. Well, I was like, oh, I know how to do a task. I'm good at school. I can do book stuff. But it was so much more, right? Because I finally learned what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus. It wasn't right away. It took time. It took time to create that relationship with him. Mm-hmm. Jim would teach me that relationships are about depth and number. So I can meet one-on-one with someone, and I have this happen all the time, and I have no depth, and it takes everything out of me. But you have to have both of those things in order to be my friend. Not that there's a requirement, but in order for me to feel fulfilled
and it wasn't
in
an
that
empty exchange.
No, it was so deep. And then he would let me ask any question I want. And I would have questions about the Bible and things I struggled with it. This doesn't make sense.
And then he would help walk you through it. Okay. Did you meet at a coffee shop, breakfast? What were you doing?
So initially we met at Garden of the Gods Club, which is the most beautiful
country club,
exquisite country club.
Beautiful
that he had
views.
a membership that someone I think paid for him. I don't even know if that's true. Anyway, he had a membership. We would meet there. He would have his little tiny bowl of soup. I would eat. We would have it over at lunch, and we would talk about the Bible.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a personal question to ask you.
Sure.
So you said when you first met him, you were with your ex-husband.
Yeah.
So where in that 5 years with Jim was there a break?
It was during that. Yeah.
And did you ever talk to him about it?
No. Okay, so hold on. That's not true. I talked about the
divorce. Did he know you were carrying that?
He knew I was carrying it, and he would help me through that. But he didn't know the real reason about the divorce, which I share in my book. And so I'll say it now, and it's so painful every time I say it. And I always feel like, take a breath, and people are now going to turn your podcast off, Mindi.
No, they're not. They're gonna turn it up right now.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had an affair in my first marriage, and it is the biggest, deepest, most horrific regret of my life. It was the meanest, most soulless, most inhumane thing I could do to that man, because he was so good to me. He gave me permission to write about it in the book. Thank you, Pete. Graciously. And he's so kind to me still.
Wow.
It was a horrendous choice that in the book I described as shrapnel going off in your life. I lost everyone but my brother and his wife. Everyone checked out.
Wow.
I had no one but my brother and his wife.
And
I don't blame them, right?
Right.
Because they were so hurt by the lies.
It's shock.
It's so
shock.
much.
Yeah.
And so, luckily, so many of those relationships have been repaired. Most importantly with Pete, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't deserve that.
I just think what's really fascinating to me about this is that it's simultaneously happening while you're studying the Bible.
Right.
For the first time in your life.
I'm all shiny. I'm learning the Bible.
But it's really fascinating because I think that a lot of us can be really doing the right things and checking the boxes of being a nice human, whatever that means to you.
Sure.
But completely doing devastating things to our soul.
Devastating.
At the same time.
I still live with it. I even thought about it as I was coming here. I thought, I'm going to have to tell. I don't feel like I always have to tell, but I knew I would with you. Because I think it's important for viewers to see that you can go through something so bad. Like I said in the beginning, I'm so obsessed with the stories of overcoming, that you can go through something so bad and so humiliating and still love Jesus with all your heart, because Jim taught me that Jesus is the God of 1,000 second chances, endless second chances.
Mm-hmm. Endless second chances.
Endless. That doesn't mean go out and murder people, do it. But he is there. He hears you. He's in that space with you.
And there's something really also interesting that like you weren't completely shut off to wanting the truth. Like when you're going through this super painful choice or whatever experience, you would describe it like there's still like almost like I see you like reaching for like help.
reaching for help.
Those Tuesday mornings are like, I'm maybe making this mistake in my personal life, but I don't want this to be me. And I'm still reaching. I'm like, that visual of somebody in the ocean, and they're like, they could either just give up and give in to those bad choices. But I feel like by you showing up every Tuesday is kind of you saying, no, still I'm still here.
I believe it's how I survived. I didn't want to kill myself, but I was so depressed and I was so sad with my choices and what I had brought into my life that being with Jim was restorative. I did tell him I was getting a divorce, and you know what he said as soon as I said? He goes, so how do we move on? What a gift. Instead of, what? Why?
That is great advice.
Right. I didn't tell him about my affair because I was so humiliated, but I wish I did. I couldn't speak it out loud. Because I think he would have offered me the forgiveness.
Yeah, he would have. I mean, say his response one more time.
When I told him about the divorce, he said, okay, so how do we move on? What do we do? Like, isn't that the response you want from every friend, every family member? No judgment. It was he was Jesus in every way.
Wow. That's incredible.
He showed up like him and he was so sparkly. I wish you could have seen his sparkly blue eyes. Look on my Facebook page, maybe go back through the pictures. He was Jesus in every way. He was everything I want to be to a friend. Mm-hmm. So now when friends tell me stuff like that, I'm like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
What's the next right choice?
What's the next right choice? Okay. And can I ask you then, when did your new husband come into your life? Was Jim still alive? Did he get to meet him?
Yes. And he married us, right? He officiated.
That's amazing.
At Glen Erie Castle,
Oh,
which Jim, as one of the original founders of the Navigators, helped bring to life. That was his job after he served in the Navy. Bring Glen Erie back to life.
That's amazing.
Right?
So he got to meet your now husband.
He did.
And how did you guys meet each other?
We met at the gym. We met at 24 Hour Fitness. Yeah. Crazy, huh?
Yeah. And it's just like a new beginning for both of you.
It was a totally new beginning, and I didn't believe I deserved it, right? I still don't. I still don't deserve this wonderful man in my life, in my mind. Mm-hmm. I'm working through that.
I love it. And you guys have one?
We have one daughter. Her name is Claire, and she's 7, almost 7. She'll say she's 7. She is.
When's her birthday?
Her birthday is on January 9th, so it's coming up.
It is coming up. I'm the 5th. So
we're
your little birthday twins. Me and Claire.
She wouldn't know what to do in your store. She's not girly at all, and I am like this. I eat this up.
You have to bring her by.
She would go, why are we here?
We'll give her a little crown. We'll give her a tour. I know she won't wear
Tomboy.
it, but we'll just say, put it on your desk for one day.
When you need it. Please put it on for mommy.
for Christmas pictures.
Right?
I love it. Okay, so what would you say? We do have something that we're going to talk about here in a minute, the secret to a happy life. So I definitely want people to pay attention to that. But what would you say you've learned about celebrating people when I'm thinking you've interviewed the most traumatic stories of victims or bystanders or whatever, from horrific stories to beautiful stories, and everything in between. What would you say you've learned about, celebrating life when it can be both up and down?
So gosh, that's such an amazing question, because it is so up and down, and it is, and everyone has a story. I think how we celebrate people is letting them be heard and seen. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but really listening and really celebrating who they are and just accepting them for who they are. I don't know. I wish that was more of a
No, I think
exciting.
It's
celebrate.
It's an answer that we can all apply. We can go into the holidays and we can sit with people and hear their stories.
Right,
when you have hours in someone's house in the afternoon and football's on, sitting down and asking them simple questions about their story.
You can learn so much from someone. How did you get there? What made you, Mindi, have all these cool things? I'm so interested in that, in the person I'm sitting across from. But not everyone's a good listener, right? Mm-hmm. So we all have different skills. That is my skill that has served me the most.
Yeah, that curiosity.
Even though I'm a chatterbox right now, but I'm on your podcast. So.
I know you're the one getting to be the feature.
I get to talk.
What are the things that you see? I mean, you are in about a great 20-some year career at the moment. What do you see in the next 20 years for Dianne Derby?
Oh, this is so fun
Dreambox.
because I always say I've achieved all my dreams, but then I'm like, oh, no. I'm way too much of a go-getter to say I've achieved my dreams. This is so weird, But if there's anyone out there listening, I really want to sing at my church. But I have a horrible singing voice. So my friend Linda, she's like the queen of opera. She's literally a trained opera singer. She goes, well, why don't we start training? I just want to sing at my church. I want to sing worship songs. I go to Life Church in Colorado Springs. It's beautiful. It looks like a concert when you walk in. I want to be on that stage, but I think maybe I need to stop talking and stop being on stages and just listen and enjoy.
This is a really cool thing to know about you, because we can
right,
make this happen. Right?
Someone's going to make it happen.
We are going to make this happen. Okay. Okay. Now what we said we would circle back to. Jim talked to you a lot about what is the secret to a happy life. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on what you learned from him, and even personally how it applies right now in your life?
I'd love to share that, because he was always asked this question, what's the secret to a meaningful life? And he would say, life is about a meaningful relationship with God, with family, and with friends. And when one of those is out of alignment, that's when you feel that chaos. Right now I'm struggling with some really deep, hard stuff with my family. So I've got the God part, I've got the friends part, pretty solid, I think. Could improve. But the family part is so painful right now in my life. And I hear Jim saying, lean into it, lean into it. Keep showing up at church. So church is my gym. That's where I go now, right? I had him for so long. I don't have him anymore. So I have to consistently go even when I don't feel like going. Mm-hmm. What a weird thing to say, right? I don't feel like going to church. But sometimes I don't. And real. I show up and I'm like, oh, thank you. That's what I needed. Just like when I would go to gym. I didn't always want to go to see Jim. How selfish sounding, right? Because sometimes life was catching up with me. I was exhausted. I would spend like 2.5 hours with him every Tuesday before I went to work and worked till 11 o'clock at night. So I just keep showing up, just keep doing that next right thing. But I do think that is the secret. I suppose I'm not there yet. I'm not 99. But I know what feels fulfilling by him teaching me those 3 things and finding the alignment within those 3. It's made a big difference.
Is that something your husband also has taken from Jim?
So I married my polar opposite. I married a man who is deeply calm, who is deeply in love with nature and outdoors. And he's just like this manly man who is a first responder. He was a cop. He's in a big old shooting. I talk about that in my book. He is calm and steady. Nothing ruffles that man except me. And so I have this wonderful balance from him. He loves Jim. He loves what Jim taught me, but he didn't have the relationship with Jim. I did. And so he lets that be mine.
Okay. But I'm sure he can really identify anybody. I'm resonating with making sure that you're peaceful with God, family, and friends.
Yeah.
That's a very simple, yet when you break it down, it's like it's hard work.
It is.
But it's
work.
a simple idea that you can tackle. But it is, like you said, you have to lean into some of the most uncomfortable places.
It's hard to confront it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to confront things. I'm not very good at that. My newsroom would argue differently, but that's when I'm in a newsroom. But it's really hard to talk about tough things.
Especially when it's personal, because your whole career has been about other people.
Right, so I always tell their tough stuff, right?
I know, I'm thinking, how many times has somebody, besides your therapist, because I love those people too,
yeah.
But how many times are people really saying, what's hard for you right now, Diane?
So what's fun is that this is such a public experience, but I feel very listened to and seen right now by you. And so I hope that the listeners can feel just that sense of peace from me, because it's very rare that I feel a sense of peace in front of another person, because everyone's constantly emoting to me. It's endless because I'm a good listener. Mm-hmm. I know you would not know again because I've been chatting through the podcast, but I really am good at that.
Do you know your Enneagram number?
No, I have no idea. And everyone asks me that. And I think I should, right?
Yeah.
Will you help me?
I will.
Okay.
I'll give
what is yours and what does it mean?
Oh, should I reveal that? I don't know if I should reveal that on today's episode. It's almost like we should do a poll and have people try to guess.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is that fun to guess what people once you know yours, you're like, ooh, you're a.
I think some people that are listening probably know my Enneagram, but it is very fun to play that game. That's why I was curious what yours are. The only thing about the Enneagram, though, is you are not allowed to diagnose people and say you are a whatever
Why
number.
Is that?
the way the test is designed is for you to, sure, you can take the test, but then you'll have a couple high numbers that relate to you.
Okay.
Then you're supposed to go read the numbers that you had high and say, oh, you know what? I think I most identify with this one. And you're supposed to self-diagnose.
Oh.
It's part of the rules.
Oh, I love this. I had a psychology degree. I love self-diagnosing anything.
I know.
What's wrong with me?
Well, it's really fascinating. I would say I didn't know much about it, truth be told, until my staff was using these numbers in conversation. They would say to each other, oh, that's so 2 of you, or I can definitely see 7. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? So I didn't want to be left behind as the old lady in the group, you know? So I this was years ago. I was like, I got to learn this. I can't be left out. So I went and read about it. And there's a book called The Road Back to You. And I read about it. And I'm not like a super, you know, I don't know. It's not a big deal to me what people's Enneagram numbers are, but it has helped me to be relatable and understand my staff specifically as they talk about it. And then, you know what it did? I did a very fascinating study where I asked all of my team members if they didn't know their number to take a test and tell me what they were. Mm-hmm. And I paid attention to, for about 5 years, what positions in my company drew and attracted certain numbers.
Ooh, interesting.
And which ones, like, oh, if there's consistently a really good, you know, proof of track record or performance in a certain task, and it happens to be the same number, it's helped me in the future for hiring to say, oh, historically, this number really thrives in this role, or they get depleted in this role and they lasted 2 months. So I've not completely put a box around it, but it has assisted me in people matching the position so that they are more fulfilled.
Well, what's cool about that is what I hear when you describe that is you trying to connect with your staff.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and so look at what you trying to connect with them ended up paying off for your business. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's great. And everybody's more happy because they're doing something that's matching their gifts and their skill sets and their interests, and they're not drained quickly.
Right.
Because you should never do a job where the majority of the time you're drained from it. It could be a 60-40 split, an 80-20 split. That's a really good scenario, 80-20, where 80% you love it. That's unlikely. I feel like I'm finally now in that 80-20 split after many years. I'm sure you do feel that way too. You know, getting to choose what you're covering and the station you work for. But in the beginning, whenever we're in our careers, it's not an age one. It's like maybe 50-50. Maybe I like it half of the time.
I cried every day as a young reporter.
Yeah. And so
that sounds so dramatic, right? But I did.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
It's hard.
I don't doubt it. I feel guilty right now telling you I quit
No.
the whole journalism
But look
path
at you now.
because of the reasons why you explained. And so I feel like you're so much more gritty. I'm like, go girl.
I have grit in a lot of ways, and then other ways I give up real quick.
I mean, I'm impressed because it was my dream career path. But then when I learned all about the things that you had to go through to get to where you are now, I'm so impressed with that. It's
Thank you.
So hard.
That's nice.
So anyways, well, thank you for joining us today. We're about to have your favorite drink. What's your favorite drink, Diane?
Iced tea.
Iced tea. Now, do you like sweet or unsweet?
Me
too.
Because after years of living in Savannah, Georgia, and everything was sweet naturally, you had to be like, So look at this.
Okay,
Ta-da.
so I feel like I've met my match. I've never met anyone that's like, I love unsweet iced tea.
And I love this kind.
And this is like,
so thanks.
This is my drink of choice. Anywhere I go to any restaurant, I always ask for unsweet iced tea.
Cheers, girlfriend.
Cheers. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, I definitely need you to, first of all, follow Dianne Derby. Where can we find more of you?
You can find me at DianneDerby.com and just search my name on all the social platforms. I don't tweet. I just don't know how to do it. Oh, I don't X, whatever it's called now. I don't know.
Okay.
But I'm on Instagram,
she does
Facebook.
she has a great website, and her book again is 200 Tuesdays. And so is that the full title?
It's 200 Tuesdays, What a Pearl Harbor Survivor Taught Me About Life, Love, and Faith. It's on Amazon.
Great.
It's everywhere books are sold.
Great. I love that. And so again, make sure you check her out. I am going to be helping her beef up her Instagram soon. And then definitely like, subscribe, tag a friend. We'd love for you to share this episode because I know it'll encourage someone else in your life. Again, thanks for joining us on the Something New Show. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow the Something New Show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.